WTF Hammer Underworlds. So today's video is going to be a warband balancing video looking at Season 2 warbands, specifically the 4th warband that I've looked at so far in this season, that being the Eyes of the Nine. And if you check the description, I've posted the link to the review video that I've made discussing and rating this warband, to which I came to draw the following conclusions. That this warband has one of the best spellcasters in the game, who's able to summon the Blue Horror, which unfortunately forces this warband to rely heavily on their leader for success, who is not so difficult for the enemy to take out of action, and who, although is exceptional, is not so exceptional. This warband also has a very difficult inspire mechanic, being that they have to successfully land a ranged attack action, which is no easy task. And until this is successful, their leader Vortimis has low defense. And even after upon inspiring, Narvia and Turash gain very negligible boosts from it. This warband does, however, have a good array of spells and upgrades for their leader to buff Vortimis, but half the warband is complete garbage, that being Narvia and Turash. And the only objective cards that are really worth their value are those based on spells, since Vortimis is very good at casting spells and since he has good access to gambit spells. But these objective cards are not easy to pull off, and also puts even more reliance on Vortimis staying alive and being successful. And although he's good, he's not a one-man warband like Mollog is. And with all this in mind, I had rated this warband as a D. So what I'm planning on doing in this video is to overhaul this warband, see what kind of changes we can make to make them competitive again, up to say an A tier. And in order to do this, I'm going to be recommending some errata changes that Games Workshop could implement to affect the existing rules of this game and give a much needed buff to Eyes of the Nine, as well as recommend some new faction specific cards that Games Workshop could print out if they really wanted to pull this warband out of the dirt and put them back into a competitive area. So let's start by looking at errata. My first recommendation is actually a fighter card errata, specifically for Vortimis, and it is as follows. Give Vortimis 2 dodge when uninspired. So he starts with 1 dodge uninspired, which just makes him easy pickings if he doesn't manage to land a range attack and actually get inspired, which could quickly just wipe this warband out of. I mean, if someone comes and takes out Vortimis early, the game is over for Eyes of the Nine. My justification is that he's difficult to inspire and he's very vulnerable until he's inspired. And other warband's leaders like Briar Queen, Barclav, he's not a leader, but Zarbag, Ilthari, they have 2 dodge when uninspired, and they are actually less essential for the success of their warband than Vortimis is, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense that he only starts with 1 dodge. And I have another fighter card errata suggestion for Vortimis as well, and that would be to make Vortimis a level 3 wizard when he's inspired. So right now he's just a level 2 wizard before and after being inspired. I would say make him a level 3 wizard when he gets inspired. And I think it'd be cool because this warband is supposed to be a magic heavy warband. I mean, they're the acolytes of Tzeentch. And this would make Vortimis actually exceptional. He'd be the only wizard who has a 3 magic characteristic, which would be cool, and would make him more comparable to other warbands that really rely on 1 unit, although he'd be more magically oriented. Now for objective card errata, I have some suggestions as well. First would be that Rising Inferno be worth 2 glory points. Just to read this card. This card you can score in the end phase if you've caused 4 or more damage with spells in the preceding action phase. Normally it's worth 1 glory point, which I feel is not nearly enough because it's actually pretty difficult to do 4 damage with spells in 1 round. So I figured if this was worth 2 in an end phase, it would actually be appealing and would actually encourage an aggressive playstyle with an inspired Vortimis. Would encourage him to fill his power deck with damaging spells, which would just be cool. And even so, it wouldn't be easy to score, so it's certainly not overpowered. I'd also recommend that Eyes of the Master be worth 2 glory points. So Eyes of the Master requires that you have 1 unit in your territory, enemy territory, and no one's territory, and that's worth 1 glory point, which really isn't a lot considering this warband doesn't have any special movement mechanics and requires 3 units commit themselves to going to specific areas and survive until an end phase just to get 1 glory normally. So 2 glory points seems more reasonable considering the task at hand. So justification is that it's a fun positioning card, but it's not worth enough glory to actually be worth putting in an Eyes of the Nine deck as it stands. This also works well with Vortimis' summoning mechanic and would encourage using other units besides just Vortimis, which would be nice because right now Narvia and Turash, for example, I mean, they don't get much play because they're not very useful. And actually I have even more errata because these guys were ranked as D and I'm really trying to overhaul them and make them stronger. My last suggestion here is power card errata. Specifically that driven by ambition not be restrictive to charge. So normally you can get +2 movement so long as you're not charging. And I don't really see the point in that. I mean, why not just give it a +2 movement and then allow them to charge with that, cover a bit of extra ground. So first of all, this encourages aggression, which is always fun. And other warbands who have cards that allow them simply to move usually get 2 times their movement so long as they don't charge. And this warband only gets +2 movement, which is just much weaker comparatively, so they might as well be able to charge with that +2 movement, make it a faction-specific Spectral Wings. And my final suggestion is Racking Change. Typically it costs 2 channel to cast, which is pretty difficult. I mean, I would make it cost just 1 channel, make it cost equivalent to Sphere of Akshi, although it could be a little bit of a better card than Sphere of Akshi, because if you happen to roll crits, you can get extra damage on it. Justification is that it would be a faction-specific Sphere of Akshi, but better. And I mean, I think that the Masters of Magic, the Eyes of the Nine, the Disciples of Change should have the best spell in the game, and this would be the best spell in the game if it costed 1 channel. So that was a pretty long list of errata suggestions. So just to quickly summarize, for fighter card errata, I recommend that Vortimus get 2 dodge when uninspired and 3 spell level when inspired. That for objective cards, Rising Inferno be worth 2 glory and Eyes of the Master be worth 2 glory. And for power cards, that Driven by Ambition not be restrictive against charging, and that Racking Change cost only 1 channel instead of 2 channel. I mean, this alone would make a very big difference, but I also do have other suggestions as well, which would be new faction-specific cards. So as I always do in these videos, I just try to justify exactly how I'd recommend Games Workshop implement new faction-specific cards into old warbands. And my justification is that valid decks require you to have 12 objective cards and then 20 or more power cards split evenly basically between Gambit and Upgrade, although you can have more Upgrade than Gambit, but not vice versa. Eyes of the Nine have only 10 objective cards, although they do have a valid power deck. So if Games Workshop would release 2 objective cards, and I said semi-useful because I've already made lots of tweaks in the errata, Eyes of the Nine could be play out of the deck and just have a little bit more versatility available to them. So what are my suggestions? My first recommendation would be a Surge card, because they don't really have many. Specifically a faction-specific Arcane Torrent worth 2 glory points instead of 1 glory point. It can be called the Winds Overflow. And reasoning is that it provides a Surge card, and it's certainly not too amazing because rolling 2 crits is not easy. But if you have Vortimus casting spells with 3 dice, you know, maybe it's a spell attack action and he does a Haymaker before that, gets 5 dice. This is actually possible to pull off and would give 2 glory point, which would just be kind of cool and also fits within that magic mastery sort of theme. And my final suggestion, which I think is a cooler suggestion, would be a new unique card, a score in the 3rd end phase card since this warband has none. And that would be, my recommendation would be a card that we can call Dedicated Sorcerer, worth 3 glory points, score in the 3rd end phase if you have attempted to cast 5 or more Gambit spells, which means you'd have to actually have 5 Gambit spells in your power deck, and have actually at least attempted to cast all 5, if not more than 5, if you happen to have put more spells in your power deck. And my justification is that this would be their only score in the 3rd end phase card, which would be nice since this warband has none. And you know, this card also is not overpowered, but it's thematically appropriate, and it's not easy to score because it would require you to completely fashion your deck around Gambit spells in order to be able to pull this off. And that basically does it for this video. So just to summarize new faction-specific cards, this warband requires 2 new objective cards in order to have a valid deck. I'd recommend a faction-specific Arcane Torrent, but worth 2 glory points, which could be called the Winds Overflow, and a new card be created called Dedicated Sorcerer, worth 3 glory points as a score in the 3rd end phase card. And my errata, of course, are summarized above. So that does it for my suggestions. I think that these tweaks would make Eyes of the Nine competitive again and very fun to play and very magically oriented, which would be cool. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, please comment below. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. And next week, I'm going to be looking into Mollog's Mob. Have a nice day.